"You're abandoning your family, Rebecca." My mom's voice thundered through the phone, cutting through the silence of my office. I pinched the bridge of my nose, already feeling the tension settle in. "Mom, I've explained this 100 times. I can't keep bailing Brian out. He's 30 years old. He needs to take responsibility for himself." Her response was immediate, sharp, and full of the same guilt-laden reproach I'd heard countless times before. "He's your brother. Family is supposed to help each other." I glanced at the neatly stacked paperwork on my desk, reminders of the long hours I worked to maintain my stability. "I've helped him, Mom. For years. This isn't about family. It's about the fact that he doesn't care. He spent all his savings, and now he expects me to clean up the mess. Again. My name is Rebecca, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in the family. After my dad passed away when I was 10, I grew up fast, taking on more than most kids my age ever had to. Meanwhile, my brother Brian always had a knack for sliding by. Now at 30, he worked part-time at a convenience store and still managed to blow through his savings on expensive gadgets, nights out, and vacations he couldn't afford. When his landlord threatened to evict him, my mom didn't ask. She demanded that I cover his rent. I refused. That decision sent my mom and Brian into a tailspin. 2 days later, I woke up to a notification on my phone. My heart sank as I opened Facebook and saw a long post from my mom. "Family should stick together, but sadly, not everyone believes that. Some people would rather abandon their own blood than lift a finger to help. It's a shame when greed comes before family values. I'm truly disappointed." The comments poured in. People I hadn't seen in years chimed in, offering sympathy and criticizing me for being selfish or uncaring. And then there was Brian's post. "I never thought my own sister would leave me out in the cold, but I guess money means more to her than her family. At least I know who really has my back. Thanks, Mom." The words stung, but not as much as the betrayal. They were painting me as a villain to everyone we knew, twisting the story to make me look heartless. I put my phone down and stared out the window, anger bubbling under the surface. I had sacrificed so much for them over the years, and this was how they repaid me? Publicly shaming me for setting boundaries? But as the anger settled into something sharper, I made a decision. If they wanted to turn this into a public spectacle, I was ready to fight back. After seeing those Facebook posts, I couldn't shake the anger coursing through me. I had tried so hard to be the dependable one, to take care of things for the family after my dad passed. But this was too much. I sat down at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, replaying the past few years in my head. How many times had I stepped in to help Brian? Too many to count. When he lost his job 2 years ago because he stopped showing up, I covered his bills until he found another one. When his car broke down, I gave him the money to fix it, only to find out later he'd used it to buy concert tickets instead. And when he borrowed money to get back on his feet, it went straight to designer sneakers and online shopping. The worst part wasn't even Brian's irresponsibility. It was my mom's unwavering defense of him. "Boys are different," she'd say whenever I brought it up. "He just needs time to figure things out." That time had turned into years of excuses, and now, with those Facebook posts, she'd gone from making excuses to outright vilifying me. I opened my email, intending to respond to a work inquiry, but I couldn't focus. The knot in my stomach wouldn't let me move on. Enough was enough. Later that evening, I called a lawyer. I explained the situation, my voice shaking with frustration as I detailed the posts and the damage they had done to my reputation. "I can't just let them get away with this," I said, my anger barely contained. The lawyer listened patiently before responding. "Defamation cases can be tricky, but if their posts have caused you real harm, whether professionally or emotionally, you have grounds to act. Let's get started by gathering evidence." I hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of anger and relief. Finally, someone was on my side, but as I gathered screenshots of the posts, an idea struck me. My dad had left an inheritance for both Brian and me, one that was supposed to be protected until we turned 25. I hadn't thought about it in years, assuming my portion was safely sitting in an account. Curiosity got the better of me. I called the lawyer back the next day. While we're at it, can you look into my inheritance? I just want to make sure everything's in order. Of course, the lawyer replied. I didn't know it yet, but that request was about to unravel a much bigger betrayal than a few Facebook posts. A week after I had called the lawyer, I received an email that sent a chill down my spine. The subject line read, "Inheritance Investigation Findings." I clicked on it and read through the summary carefully. My lawyer had discovered that, for the past 5 years, Brian had been withdrawing money from what should have been my portion of the inheritance. The account had been managed by my mom until I turned 25, but it seemed that Brian had somehow gained access to it after that and had been dipping into it regularly. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the document. Thousands of dollars, gone. Money I'd never even known I had, used for who knows what. When I called my lawyer to get more details, his voice was calm but firm. It appears that your brother accessed the account without your permission. It's a clear case of theft. He's taken a significant portion of what was rightfully yours. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what he was saying. How could this happen? My mom was in charge of the account for years. She never said anything about Brian having access. It's possible she didn't know, the lawyer said. But it's also possible she trusted him to manage it responsibly. Either way, it's a serious breach. The implications were staggering. Not only had Brian been stealing from me, but my mom, whether knowingly or unknowingly, had let it happen. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the financial records my lawyer had sent me. Each transaction felt like a slap in the face. Concert tickets, electronics, vacations, things I had struggled to afford for myself while Brian had been using my money to fund his lifestyle. The Facebook post suddenly felt like the least of my problems. This wasn't just about public humiliation anymore. This was a betrayal that went to the very core of my family. I debated calling my mom right then and there, demanding answers. But I stopped myself. Confronting her without a plan would only lead to more deflection and guilt-tripping. Instead, I emailed my lawyer. "What's the next step?" I asked. By the time I went to bed, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this go. For years, I had been the one who sacrificed, the one who kept the peace while Brian got away with everything. Not anymore. As I turned off the light, one thought kept running through my mind. They're about to find out exactly who they're dealing with. The next day, I met with my lawyer in his office to discuss the next steps. The small room felt suffocating as I laid out every piece of information he had uncovered. "This isn't just about the inheritance," I said firmly. "Brian and my mom have crossed a line. Those Facebook posts were bad enough, but now I find out he's been stealing from me for years. I want to take action, serious action." My lawyer nodded, his expression calm and professional. "We'll start by filing for defamation based on the social media posts. But regarding the inheritance theft, we'll need to pursue a separate case. It's straightforward given the records we have, but it might get messy." "Messy doesn't bother me," I replied, crossing my arms. "I'm done letting them walk all over me." That evening, I called my mom. I needed answers, whether she was complicit in this or just blindly trusting Brian. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Rebecca," she answered quickly, her tone still carrying the usual edge of annoyance. "Are you calling to apologize? Brian is—" "Save it," I interrupted, cutting her off mid-sentence. "I have some questions about Dad's inheritance, specifically about why Brian has been accessing my portion." There was a long pause on her end. "What are you talking about?" she finally asked, her voice tinged with confusion. Or was it guilt? "I had a lawyer look into it," I said. "For the past 5 years, Brian's been withdrawing money from my share. Thousands of dollars, Mom. Did you know about this?" Her hesitation spoke volumes. "Rebecca, it's not what you think," she said finally. "Brian. He needed help. He promised me he'd pay it back." My chest tightened, a mixture of anger and disbelief washing over me. You knew? You knew he was stealing from me and you didn't say anything? I didn't think it was stealing, she said defensively. It's family money. He was in a tough spot, and I trusted him to handle it responsibly. I laughed bitterly. Responsibly? He's been blowing it on vacations and gadgets while I've been working myself to the bone, and you let it happen. Rebecca, please, she pleaded. You don't understand. Brian's been struggling. I thought you'd be okay without it. That's not your call to make, I snapped. I trusted you to protect that money and you handed it over to him like it was nothing. Do you have any idea how betrayed I feel right now? She tried to argue, but I couldn't listen anymore. This conversation is over, I said coldly. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. As I hung up, a wave of clarity washed over me. For years I had let them manipulate me, guilt me into submission. Not anymore. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about finally standing up for myself. The fallout from that phone call was immediate. The next morning, my phone lit up with missed calls and frantic messages from my mom. Her tone in the voicemails shifted between defensive and desperate. Rebecca, you can't do this. Brian didn't mean any harm. Followed by, let's just sit down and talk about this as a family. You don't need to involve lawyers. But I didn't respond. I felt a sense of control. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about setting boundaries, about making it clear that I wasn't going to be their doormat any longer. Brian, of course, took a different approach. Later that day, I logged into Facebook to find a new round of posts aimed at me. First, she refuses to help her own brother. Now she's threatening to sue her family over money. Greedy, selfish, and heartless. Some people really show their true colors when it comes to cash. I stared at the post, my jaw tightening. The comments were filled with the same crowd of enablers from before, chiming in with their unsolicited opinions. She sounds awful. Family should come first, no matter what. Brian, you're better off without her. And I took a screenshot and sent it to my lawyer without a second thought. The next day, I met with him again. We're filing both cases, he said. The defamation suit is straightforward. As for the inheritance, we have more than enough evidence to prove theft. But you need to be prepared. This is going to strain your relationship with your mom even further. I leaned forward, my expression hard. It's already strained beyond repair. Let's do it. He nodded. One more thing. If this goes to court, Brian will have to explain where the money went. Are you ready for that? It could get ugly. A part of me hesitated. Did I want to know how deep this betrayal ran? But then I thought about the years I'd spent sacrificing for a family that never appreciated me. I'm ready, I said firmly. That evening, I got another call from my mom. This time I picked up. Rebecca, she said, her voice trembling. I talked to Brian. He told me some things about the money. I didn't know it was this bad. What did he tell you? I asked, my tone sharp. Her silence spoke volumes. I'm sorry, she finally whispered. I didn't realize how much he'd taken. I should have stopped him. Her words felt hollow, but I let her continue. I'm going to talk to him again. We'll figure this out. Just, please don't take this to court. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. It's out of my hands now, Mom. You should have thought about this years ago. As I hung up, I felt a mix of anger and relief. She was starting to see the truth, but it was far too late to undo the damage. A week later, my lawyer called with an update that caught me completely off guard. We've been reviewing additional financial records, he began, his tone calm but serious. And it turns out Brian hasn't just been dipping into your inheritance. He's also been misusing some of your mom's accounts. I froze. What do you mean? It seems he's been accessing funds from an account your mom set aside for her retirement, he explained. We found consistent withdrawals that matched the same pattern as the ones he made from your inheritance. For a moment, I couldn't find the words. My mom had been so adamant about defending Brian, so blind to his faults, and now he'd stolen from her too? Does she know? I asked finally. Not yet, he replied. But if we proceed with both cases, this information will come to light. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. As much as I was angry with my mom for enabling Brian, the thought of her losing her retirement savings made my stomach churn. Later that evening, I called her. Mom, I began, my voice steady. I need to tell you something, and it's not going to be easy to hear. What is it? She asked, her tone weary. I explained what the lawyer had uncovered. The silence on her end was deafening. He took my money? She finally whispered, her voice shaking. Yes, Mom, I said, softening my tone. I didn't want to tell you this, but you deserve to know. Brian's been stealing from both of us. Her response was a mix of shock and devastation. I can't believe this, she said, her voice breaking. I trusted him. I trusted him with everything. You shouldn't have, I said gently. I know you love him, but you've been enabling him for years. This is what happens when there are no consequences. She began to cry, and for the first time I felt a pang of sympathy for her. As much as she had hurt me, she was also a victim of Brian's selfishness. What do we do now? She asked through her tears. We let the legal process play out, I said firmly. This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about accountability. The following days were tense. My lawyer filed both cases, and I could feel the weight of the upcoming confrontation pressing down on me. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew it was necessary. For years, I had allowed my mom and Brian to take advantage of my kindness. But this time, I was standing my ground. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions, no matter how much it hurt. The first court date arrived sooner than I expected. Sitting in the courtroom, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. On one side, I wanted justice for what Brian had done, for the years of entitlement, for the theft, for the way he had painted me as the villain. But on the other side, I knew this process would be painful, dragging our family's darkest secrets into the light. When Brian entered the courtroom with my mom, his smug expression made my blood boil. He had the audacity to look bored, like this was just another inconvenience in his life. My mom, however, looked completely defeated. She avoided my gaze, her shoulders hunched as though the weight of everything had finally caught up to her. The lawyer presented the evidence methodically. Transaction records, bank statements, and screenshots of the social media posts were laid out in black and white. Each time my lawyer spoke, I could see Brian shifting uncomfortably in his seat. And when it came time for Brian to speak, his tone was predictably deflective. I didn't mean for things to get this far, he said, his voice dripping with faux sincerity. I was struggling, okay? I only took the money because I thought I could pay it back. But Rebecca doesn't understand what it's like to need help. She's always had everything together. My jaw clenched as I listened to his excuses. Struggling didn't explain the vacations, the gadgets, or the nights out. And as much as he tried to play the victim, the evidence told a different story. When the judge asked my mom to testify, she hesitated, glancing at Brian nervously. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. I trusted Brian, she admitted. I thought he'd use the money responsibly, but I didn't know how much he'd taken, or what he was using it for. I didn't realize how much he'd hurt Rebecca. Her words stung, but they also carried a glimmer of accountability. She was acknowledging the truth. The court ruled in my favor. Brian was ordered to repay the money he had stolen, and the defamation case was settled with a public apology that both he and my mom had to issue online. It wasn't a perfect victory. I knew it would take years for Brian to pay back what he owed, and the apology, while satisfying, didn't erase the damage they had done. But it was a start. As we left the courtroom, Brian shot me a glare. I hope you're happy, he spat. I am, I said simply, meeting his gaze without flinching. My mom lingered behind, her eyes filled with tears. Rebecca, I don't know how to make this right, she said quietly. You start by being honest, I replied. With me, with yourself, and with Brian. No more excuses. She nodded slowly, her face a mix of guilt and sadness. I'll try, she whispered. That evening I sat in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. The courtroom battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Setting boundaries with my family wasn't going to be easy, but I felt like I had the strength to do it. And as much as it hurt to see my mom and brother for who they really were, I felt a sense of relief knowing I had finally stood up for myself. In the weeks following the court ruling, life felt oddly quiet. I wasn't inundated with calls or messages from my mom anymore, demanding that I be there for Brian or solve their latest crisis. It was as though the verdict had forced her to take a step back, or maybe she was just too embarrassed to face me. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. One afternoon, as I sorted through my bills at the kitchen table, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed my mom's name. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to pick up. Hi, Mom, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Hi, Rebecca, she replied, her voice hesitant. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About the inheritance, the court case, Brian. I waited, unsure of where this was going. I didn't want to believe it at first, she continued. But I can't ignore the truth anymore. You were right. About him, about me. I let him take advantage of you, and I stood by while he hurt you. I'm so sorry. Her words hit me harder than I expected. For years I had dreamed of an apology like this, but now that it was here, I didn't know how to feel. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. But it's not just about apologizing, Mom. It's about changing. For years I've let you and Brian treat me like I didn't matter. That has to stop. She sighed. I know. I've been thinking about how I can do better. I just hope it's not too late to fix things between us. I didn't respond right away. It's not too late, I said eventually, but it's going to take time. Meanwhile, Brian had gone radio silent. Part of me wondered if he was plotting some sort of revenge, but my lawyer assured me the legal agreements made it impossible for him to retaliate financially. Still, I knew better than to trust him. One afternoon, I received a notification that Brian had posted on Facebook. Against my better judgment, I opened it, bracing myself for another round of vitriol. Instead, I found a post that was markedly different from his usual tone. I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt, especially my sister, Rebecca. I made mistakes I can't undo, and I'm working to make things right. I know it'll take time, but I hope she'll eventually forgive me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was he actually trying to take responsibility, or was this just another performance? Either way, I decided not to respond. I wasn't ready to open that door again. Not yet. In the months that followed, I began to rebuild my life. I threw myself into work, pursued hobbies I'd neglected, and even started planning a long overdue vacation. My relationship with my mom remained fragile but functional. She made an effort to call me weekly, not to complain or demand anything, but to ask how I was doing. It was a small step, but it felt significant. As for Brian, I kept my distance. The court had forced him to pay back the money he had stolen, but I knew it would be years before I saw most of it. That was fine by me. I wasn't holding my breath for his redemption. What mattered most was that I had finally reclaimed my power. Months later, I found myself sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about my family or their endless demands. Life had changed in ways I never thought possible. The constant tension that used to weigh on my shoulders had lifted, replaced by a calm I didn't know I was capable of. I had always thought that standing up for myself would mean losing everything, my family, my sense of belonging. But instead, it had given me something I'd been searching for all along: peace. My mom and I had begun to rebuild our relationship, but it was slow. She still called once a week, often to update me on small things like her garden or a book she was reading. These conversations felt lighter, freer, as though the weight of unspoken expectations had finally disappeared. As for Brian, he remained distant. His court-ordered payments came in sporadically, and while I appreciated the restitution, I didn't depend on it. The truth was, I didn't need his apology or his money to move forward. I had learned to stand on my own, not out of anger or spite, but out of respect for myself. And that was enough. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized the most significant change wasn't in my family, it was in me. For years, I had been caught in a cycle of seeking approval from people who only seemed to take me for granted. I had bent over backward to support my family, sacrificing my own happiness and stability in the process. But standing up for myself, even when it was hard, had shown me a different path. My mom's tentative efforts to rebuild our relationship were a small comfort. She was trying, in her own way, to make amends. While I didn't fully trust her yet, I could see glimpses of the mother I'd hoped she could be, someone who cared about me for who I was, not just for what I could provide. Brian, on the other hand, was a different story. His attempts at public apologies felt hollow, and I wasn't ready to let him back into my life. Maybe one day I'd be able to forgive him, but that day wasn't today. What mattered most was that I had learned to set boundaries, to value my own time and effort. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted myself, but I knew now that standing up for my worth was always the right choice. As I sipped my tea, I felt a quiet sense of pride. My family might not have changed completely, but I had. And that was enough. The peace I'd found was hard-earned, and I wasn't letting it go.